Hello, everyone, and welcome into the off-season podcast. I'm Hunter, joined as always by Brodie and Trevor. We're going to be joined by more people tonight. Lord willing, fingers crossed. Haven't really got a confirmation email, but the plan is to have several of the imposters. Actually, the whole Air BnB group is supposed to be joining us at different sections tonight.
The Iron Curtain.
Yeah, to kind of go over a little bit of an imposter recap, imposter reunion, talk about the show as a whole, pick their brains on some of the big moments, see where their head was at. And now that they know it's Trevor, and that's out, see what they think of that. So we're going to be going through all of that today, but I thought we'd still kick it off with a fun little story to get things going here.
I just want to say really fast, if
absolutely.
This is a reunion titled episode, I give full permission for you to AI the thumbnail to make it look like the Bachelorette reunion show, and I'm the one, like I'm the Bachelorette.
Okay.
You can just insert our faces.
I'd prefer not to AI it. So are you just willing to put on like red dress or something?
Sure.
Okay, that'd be way better. Maybe I could use for the thumbnail, maybe not. Who knows? But we'll do that tomorrow. So let's kick it off with a story. This came from Trom, Tromm. He said, so my buddy Brian and I were playing Turkey Hill in La Plata, Maryland. It was fall and the wind was gusty, and we finished our round and went back to hole one just to throw some more, as you do. There were multiple pin locations. Long was to the left of a group kind of a triangle trees at 439. The middle was dead straight ahead, but to the right of said trees at 398 feet, and the short is of no consequence. A family of park goers walks up to us and we're curious as to what we were doing. So naturally, we went full nerd and started showing them putters, mids, fairway drivers, explaining flights, etc. And to give them an example, Brian threw his eagle aiming for the long basket. A headwind gust grabbed the disc and yanked it hard to the right. He beat the trees and canned the middle basket at 398 feet. So we kind of freaked out, giving high fives, laughing, carrying on, and Brian starts running to get his disc. Meanwhile, I'm just standing there with this family who are looking at me and each other like, what the heck's going on here? So I tried to explain to them that what they saw is not normal, like at all. And I'm telling them this with like real excitement, right? And they just kind of walked away with their hands in the pocket. The black ace was awesome, but when Brian got back to me and I told him what I just said and their reaction, we couldn't stop laughing about it. And that was the best part of the situation.
So I have a question. Is this what Brodie probably has the same question?
No, I have a statement, but
I was going to say, Hunter, is this what happened to you when you first got into disc golf? Is that why you believed the aces were easy for years?
Oh, no, I just believe.
It's like when people get attacked by a dog when they're little and they're like scared of dogs.
How many aces did you just get in that video you shot on Friday, Trev?
It's not a real course, not real aces.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But if you if you were interested in watching the video, they're real, very real.
Okay.
But
I was curious.
This is this story does bring up an interesting point that we've actually discussed numerous times. That disc golf, for whatever reason, this isn't like a rare reaction. Like
I feel like 398 feet, something's amiss that they weren't a little bit like what.
I still think there is some sort of disconnect. And I don't know why.
Well, it's like
there is a disconnect between seeing it and knowing the difficulty of it.
It's similar to, it's like when you're playing like catch with your buddies and you're just throwing a frisbee back and forth. Like, I feel like that to like throw a frisbee in and get caught by something way down there just doesn't really click in as much as like I threw a football into a basketball hoop from like full court.
What?
Like I feel like most people have like attempted that. You know what I'm saying? Where like they have a scale of like, I know how hard it is to throw a football, whereas like the only scale of frisbee is like the only experience I have is I toss it to my buddy and it's really easy.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Okay, I see what
whereas
you're saying
like
now.
I know how like most people in their life have tried to throw a football more than like 30 yards or 25 yards. And like, so when they see someone do something like that, they already have a scale of like, oh, I couldn't do that. That's really hard. Whereas the frisbee is just like, your only scale is I've tossed it to my buddy at the beach. We had a lot of fun. It's easy.
The other thing you got to consider in a story like that too, if literally the first throw you ever see, like you put yourself in those shoes and the first throw you ever see, you might not overreact because you don't want to look like, you don't know if that's normal. So you just don't want to look crazy. Because you might be thinking in your head, that's the most insane thing I ever saw. But you don't want to be like, make a big deal if it's not a big deal.
But like,
Well, it's also like if that's the first throw you've ever seen, like you gotta think it can't be that rare. Like some random dude in a park just
yeah,
did.
but you guys are still you guys are still like, if you let me give you a perfect example. When I was in India, now India, they are very, like, the culture there is very curious when it comes to like outsiders. But when I was over in India filming a video, for one of the videos, we ended up having like 100 park goers because we were in a park filming it, just standing around watching because they've never seen a frisbee thrown, but they were intrigued at the flight of it and the task that I was trying to do. I just think throwing it, maybe it's the target. Maybe the target's a bad target, but what you guys, I'm not agreeing with what you guys are saying is like, oh, maybe they've never seen it, so they don't know. Like, if you I'm trying to think of a sport that if you showed them the coolest thing in that sport, most people that have never seen it would still be like, wow, that's impressive. Dunking a basketball, that's impressive, whether you've seen it or not. You know what I'm saying? Like hitting a home run in baseball.
I'm going to be honest, though. I still think there's an anomaly. I think if you took a control group of 100 people who have never seen disc golf and showed them a 400-foot ace, I think 85 to 90% of the people would react and be like, wow, that was insane.
Well,
I really think there's an anomaly.
If the group was reacting, like if the person who threw it loses their mind.
I think that these people reacted.
I've heard this story I've heard this story.
Brodie, let me say this though, Brodie. Let me say this. If I made a 100-foot throw in, I would not expect the same thing. It's the fact that it was 400 feet. If it actually was, that's a really far distance to throw a disc in.
Long way.
But I totally agree with you that a 100-foot throw in, while it's still very difficult, people might not react at all to that because it might just be like, is that what you're supposed to do?
Is it a crazy take that we should maybe go to a basketball hoop target?
Somebody talked about that once.
Because what you just said, throwing 100 feet into a basket, you're not expecting anything. But throwing 100 feet frisbee into a basketball hoop,
there's also no scale though. On a basketball court, you know how far a basketball court is. When you're out in the middle of a pasture, nobody has any scale for how far you're throwing.
Well, but
so we need more
to Brodie's
scale.
To Brodie's point,
basketball courts.
If you think about like a basketball goal, you can fit 2 balls through the rim, right?
Yeah.
Golf hole is probably what, 2.5, 3 balls into a hole?
2 balls exactly.
2 balls. So okay, so that's the standard. If you took a disc golf basket with how big it is, you could fit a lot of discs in there if you're lining them up. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, like 2 or 3 discs fit into the cage, but we're not just throwing into the cage. We're throwing into like the whole catching apparatus. The object we're throwing in relation to other sports is like, it's drastically easier.
Do you guys remember the tournament out in where was that? Was it in Finland? It wasn't in Finland. It was the tournament we went to right before Finland. Right before the European Open.
Was it Solo?
Was that what it was? And you remember you probably saw some of the clips. It was like the massive basket on hole 1. Like the thing was ginormous. Do you guys remember that?
Oh yeah. People were posting it left and right.
Is that what like people I mean, that's obviously an exaggeration, but watching someone throw into that from 100 feet, you're like, well, yeah, obviously look how big the target is. Is that what like people outside removed as being like, well, yeah, because you think about it in basketball, making a half court shot, people go nuts. If you walked out on a basketball hoop right now, a basketball court right now, and shot from half court and you made it, people would go absolutely nuts. How far is that? 50 feet?
Probably, yeah, something like that.
You go nuts if you were shooting to win a car, but like
no, Trevor, no, stop it. If we showed up to a basketball court and you picked up a ball and you just shot from half court, we would all look at you and be like, oh.
Yeah,
like, first try probably. But after like 4 shots, nobody cares.
Foot putt and jammed it, I don't think anyone's going to be going nuts. Again, this is outside of like tournaments and stuff like that.
No, that's a good point.
And I'm wondering, like, maybe that there is something to it. I think Hunter might be on it. Like, I think just the mass.
Yeah, it's just too big.
It's too big of a mass.
Yeah, gotta agree. All right, well, we have our first imposter contestant to welcome in here, Josh Alcock. He was, one of the more surprising exits from the show. How are you feeling today, Josh? How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Had a nice long 8-hour day of work and getting off about now. So
there you go.
Lot of time staring at a screen today already. What's a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing I want to talk to you about is when you got voted off in the show and in the moment, you were pretty surprised, and you were trying to kind of figure out what exactly happened. Like, how did you get to being voted off? Now that you have some context, like you've watched the episode and you've like seen people discussing before and everything, do you understand their votes more, or are you still surprised that they chose to vote you out at that point?
I'm still a little surprised. I guess a lot of what was happening, it seems, especially Mikey's side and a little bit Larkin, is they kept mentioning vibes. And I guess that I was trying to, play a game where if the imposter makes it to the end, you get $0. So you kind of have to try to talk to people and see what they're trying to think of. But I mean, the other part is you don't see, okay, was I the one who pulled someone into this chat, or did someone pull me into it? So maybe they thought, oh, I'm the one pulling everyone in talking about stuff, when it could have been Trevor pulling me in. Who knows?
I still don't understand that argument. Like, what you wanted to ask people who they thought was the imposter, and now all of a sudden that makes you the imposter? I don't know. No, I think honestly what ended up happening, watching it from the outside, is the votes just got worse and worse. The people getting voted out made no sense more and more. And you kind of were like the tip of the iceberg, because I mean, you were one of the people that I was like, I think if he is the imposter, then he's kind of beating the game, because the game does have a big crutch, and that is the fact of the imposter really doesn't have to do anything. We have enough players that the imposter could actually try his best to get the line and help the team and still make a lot of money. And that's the big issue with the game. And if you play it that way, well, then great on you. You literally did zero the entire show to make me think that you were the imposter. So when you got voted out, I was like, bro, what are these people doing, man?
Well, Josh at the end of the day caught votes in a similar way I did, which was the contestants that were left towards the end were really acting in self-defense, really. And Josh was somebody who was practicing gamesmanship the same way I was, and that's how I caught votes by the end. People were concerned that I was talking to people and practicing gamesmanship. Now, they had reason to point that at me, but Josh caught votes in a similar way, where I did not expect the vote to go to Josh. I didn't even vote for Josh. I didn't join that block, and it really came down to, like you mentioned, Mikey and others kind of almost villainizing you for playing the game. And that is something where if you pursue the conversations and that narrative aggressively in this particular game, that did not work out for players. Other than maybe Gary, you could argue that Gary, just because he was such a nice guy, that he was able to participate in a lot of those conversations, but somehow not catch the blame. But a player like Joel got his way by just staying out of people's way almost.
But what was funny to me was
he made that putt. That's why
he also made that putt.
Early in the show, it was the opposite, because if you remember episode 1, a lot of people had suspicion, and even episode 2 a little bit, they had suspicion on Joel because he wasn't involving himself in the game talk. It just kind of shifted later in it. Now, Josh,
people got scared.
The other thing I want to talk to you about, I'm probably going to ask everyone this one, is, so now obviously it was Trevor. So as you're thinking back across, or as you watch the series, are there any moments that now, knowing Trevor was the imposter, you're like, how did I not pick up on X, Y, or Z? Is there anything that stands out to you like that?
And I'll tell you if I was trying or if I just sucked.
It was definitely a lot easier looking back. And some of the stuff, it's here or there, and like we said, people weren't playing consistent. So especially when the rain came down, it's tough to assume whether that's a bad shot. because, we're watching Mikey throws a forehand 50 feet straight into the ground. Well, that makes it a lot less suspicious that Trevor, the hole before, chucked it straight into the trees and got the luckiest bounce ever and back onto even a putt, I think it was, that, we've all seen the Foundation channel that putting is not the strong suit. So all Trevor had to do, try not to make it, is just try a little less hard to make it. And it was somewhat consistent that you were like low left or like middle left. So the putting wasn't, as easy, but a couple of the shots now, watching it back, as well as it's a 30-minute round on YouTube. I think the first round was 3 hours or like 3.5 hours to film. Yeah. So like everything just kind of blends together at a certain point. It's tough to remember exact shots. Like, Trevor might have, messed something up the first round, but we couldn't remember because all we could remember in the first hole was bad upshots or, the infamous forehand roller.
Yeah.
I think that made, I think Trevor did play a good game, but I think ultimately, Josh, what really made the game very challenging was we had like 6 people acting like the imposter for no reason. So that was the challenging part, is like, to me, it was always, let's eliminate the people that are doing stuff that an imposter would do, whether they are or not. If you want to tell someone to throw a disc that they've never thrown before and you think that's a good idea, sorry, you're out, brother. And if it turns out that you're not the imposter, oh well. But like, there was just so many people doing stuff. Larkin telling Gary to run that putt on that elevated basket with Trevor putting right after. Like, why? Like, why? So that's where it's like you just had so many people doing stuff consistently. It wasn't just like they did one thing and you're like, that's weird. They were consistently hole after hole doing stuff. And so Trevor was able to kind of just blend in, I think, with that.
Yeah, there were definitely a few big moments that when they happened, I thought, oh, wow, that's going to draw a lot of attention.
Yeah. Well, also, it turns out I think Trevor is a lot worse than he actually is. Because like him playing, there was never a time where I was like, that's weird. Why did he miss that putt? Or
Connor and I multiple times after you would come through, Brodie, and you like at one point you're like, Trevor's playing out of his mind right now. He's playing some of the best golf. And you like walked out. I looked at Connor, I was like, that is the most like insulting thing I've ever heard. Because like Connor and I are watching Trevor being like, how is everyone not so suspicious of this guy right now? And it turns out a lot of those shots, Trevor wasn't actually trying to mess up. But so, the rain round, Trev, that Josh
can I say something though real quick, Hunter? Can I say something real quick? Because I think this would be actually very fascinating. Because here another was an issue, Josh, because I don't know if you had the same thing. Outside of Trevor, who I thought was a lot worse. I mean, the person I thought I knew the game the best of, clearly I was wrong. I didn't know how good anyone was.
Yeah.
So that made it really challenging. So I just thought of this idea. What if we did something where at the beginning of this season, the beginning of the episode, we did like a skills thing. And that was to basically build money into the pot. There's no imposter. Everyone is solo dolo and you're doing stuff to try to build your own pot, to try to make as much money as possible. So everyone's trying to make putts. Everyone's trying to throw accurately. You do like kind of a combine almost. So then you at least have a gauge of like how good people are versus like, I mean, a lot of people thought Larkin was the imposter after round 1 because he was just shanking shots. Turns out the dude just can't play in the woods. Like he wasn't the imposter at all.
Speaking of Larkin, we're about to bring him on. So Josh, I'm gonna give you the floor for any final thoughts or anything we didn't mention that you wanted to bring up that in regards to the series.
No, I think it was a fun time. Definitely put some stuff in perspective with like, I always used to think I'd want to do Big Brother. I enjoyed this show. I don't think I could handle 90 days in a house. That would be way too much, but fun time. Glad I was able to make it, and just a little bit sad that I didn't get to slap out the camera to end it.
That's fair. That is a good point. So, all right. Well, I appreciate your time, Josh. Oh, can you also, a lot of questions on this I wanted to ask you, and I'm about to ask Larkin. Can you confirm that Mikey did end up coming through and splitting the money?
Yes, Mikey
Okay.
split it, which is one of the reasons I am not nearly as mad about getting voted out.
Very fair, very fair. Yeah, a lot of people just assumed that was a good guy play of Mikey to avoid votes, and so people definitely wanted that confirmation. Well, I appreciate your
Villain
time,
move.
Josh. I appreciate your time, and we'll definitely have to talk to you again at some point. Let's see if we can't get Larkin in here to tell his side of the story. As Silas makes the transition here.
Come on, Silas. You
Silas is
got
killing
it,
it. First off,
Silas.
can we just get some appreciation for Silas? I mean, just to even have this show working is phenomenal. There we go. There's the man,
Hello.
the myth, the legend, Sir Larkin.
Hello.
Welcome back, Larkin. Good to see you again. Let's go back actually to that first round that Brodie just brought up. Specifically, one of the shots that was catching some heat was towards the end. I believe it was like the tee shot on 18 or something. Yeah. Walk us through kind of what was going through your head at that moment, and did you think when you messed that up, like, crap, I just got out in the first round, or walk us through that? What was it like playing there?
Oh yeah, that was brutal. Yeah, the entire previous weeks coming here, I didn't really research what courses we were going to play or anything like that. So I was just practicing distance for a couple weeks, and I was getting this stupid angled up form. And I was trying really hard while I was playing there in the woods not to do my kind of like distance form. That's fairly inaccurate. And I just got nervous on that shot. It was a tunnel shot. It seemed like there's the one goal is just get to the end of that tunnel. And I did not get to the end of that tunnel. So just nerves got to me there. And I just went back to some pretty terrible form.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. The other kind of moment that Brodie actually just brought up that got you some suspicion is one of the moments when you're telling Gary to run a putt on a elevated basket, and Trevor was kind of the next one up. Do you remember that moment and why you were thinking, oh, Gary, let's send it, let's run this thing, when other people might have told him otherwise?
I remember watching it. I don't remember being there. To be honest, to be super honest. That was the one that I think was at like 4:30 a.m. my time or something like that. And I remember being so tired during that round.
That's fair.
So honestly, I can't remember telling you what my mindset was. I was probably just thinking it'd be fun to do.
That's true.
It was
jet lag.
Yeah, I don't really remember being there, but I remember watching it. And
well, did you disagree with yourself when you were watching it? Where you're like, Larkin, what are you doing, man?
No. No. I remember watching him like, man, it would be way cooler if he actually tried to putt that.
He sticks to it. Sticks to his guns.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so now let's get into the actual, like, walk us back through the whole thing. You now know Trevor's the imposter, obviously. Oh, yeah. As you look back, is there anything that like really stands out of like, how did I not get this guy during X, Y, or Z moment in the show, or did he still kind of fly under the radar?
No, dude, I don't know if Josh mentioned this, but I think Trevor lucked out really, really hard in the beginning, because I remember us kind of consolidating and talking about who we think it is. And Trevor played great. He wasn't like an obvious suspicion for any reason that we kind of deduced, I guess. But we kind of talked about it at home, because obviously we're all in an Air BnB together. It's kind of going to be a focal point for all of our conversations. And we're just like, there's no way the foundation guys would let Trevor get it, even if it's random. And that just was kind of burned into our head of like, surely they just wouldn't let Trevor have it. Like, that would just be too perfect. And I guess we just didn't trust that you guys were truly randomized it either up until that point. So
yeah, that's a valid
we just kind of wrote you off in our head, like, pretty hard.
I figured that could basically go one of two ways, to where you would either lean the direction of they wouldn't do it, and like I said, I didn't know that going into it. Like, I didn't have a game plan. I was just as surprised as anybody. But once I found out, I didn't know if people would target me quickly or do that. So that was definitely a surprise to me as well.
Well, what's funny was pre-show, I already obviously knew it's going to be Trevor. And so we were like discussing it, but Trevor had no idea it was going to be him. The only thing he knew on anyone else is because back in February, we decided it was going to be imposter. So he knew we're about to play imposter, but then everything else he was completely in the dark about. And so he, as it was getting closer, was just like, man, when voting comes, like, no matter what I do, I'm going to get voted out early. Like, me and Brodie are the first two gone. And Trevor was like set on that before he ever knew he was the imposter. Cause for some reason he just was like, everyone's going to have a target on Brodie and I's back no matter what. So yeah, it's actually funny to hear that it kind of went the opposite way. And
Well, it's funny because
well,
I was to say I walked around at the beginning, and Larkin was like one of the first people I walked up to because I was so scared of getting targeted that I was like, I need to try to get an alliance with anybody I can. So like I walked up to Larkin, I think first, and was like, hey man, like let's not vote for each other. Like let's stick together. I walked up to a number of people. Some people just like ratted me out right away. I think Mikey just started screaming from the hills that I was trying to make alliances. But no, Larkin was at least cool about it. We had something going for a little bit.
You held that for a while,
and I got slandered on the final vote.
Yeah. Okay. So
that was a great play. No, I totally agree with you. That was a great play on your part in hindsight. But
walk us through that, Trevor.
No, so if you're referring to me, what are you referring to? And then I'll explain.
In your vote in the second to last episode, you're like,
yeah,
Larkin's gunning for me, man. I mean, it was a great play just to draw aggro towards me because I don't know what your communications were with the other guys that also voted for me. But I'm like,
right.
I'm not. At no point did I think it was Trevor ever.
So that was not a lie for me. Somebody told me.
Oh,
and
for real?
I wish. Yeah, there are multiple points in these episodes where people are going to think I'm a psycho. But like I was speaking truth, like really 90% of the time. And that one, Larkin, was legitimately real because I was not going to vote for you under any circumstances until it was like a few holes in to the Timbrook round. And somebody, I genuinely cannot tell you exactly who it was. I know it wasn't Mikey. It probably would have been either Joel or Josh, maybe Josh, but somebody told me that you were going around early. I think the way they phrased it was you were trying to get turn people on to me because you were worried about getting voted off. And that genuinely was like why I said that in the interview, because I heard it. Somebody told me that. I didn't make that up. Yeah.
It's so funny.
Somebody went after you. I didn't know that. I thought that was just the truth.
It's so funny hearing these things in hindsight because like we kind of became these like two separate groups towards the last couple of rounds of like, and hearing our experiences from these groups is like so staunchly different. Like there's so much stuff I would have just absolutely never known. Conversations occurred, things that happened that I just in the other group just had no freaking clue. So
I think knowing also that the imposter was still in play changed the way the game was played because there was so many points where we thought the imposter was out of the game. And so it almost became a relief. And it was like, okay, just do what you can to make the line. And if if you're the main reason, or if you're like a wild card of why we're not hitting the line, then we're just going to vote you out. And the people that played the most consistent and best will make the money at the end. But then as soon as you're like, nope, imposter's still in, that I think completely made everyone change how to play the game. And then they started doing wild stuff and voting people out for wild reasons
going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-defense. There's a lot of self-defense, I think. All right, well, it looks like Joel's about to hop in here. So Larkin, I want to give you the floor. Anything that we didn't cover that you want to like clear the air on? Maybe you saw a comment that's sticking out in your head and you're like, if only they knew the truth, or anything like that. Your final thoughts?
Yeah, I would have never turned on you, Trevor. I'm sorry. I love you. I would have never slandered your name like that. That did not happen. That was a rigorous lie.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to that because that's something that I never like even thought to second guess is somebody would be lying to me to then get me on a voting block. Like I was coerced. I feel dirty right now.
Someone was working hard. Yeah. No. Yeah, it's not the case. It's so interesting.
Well, dang. Well, there you have it, Larkin. I really appreciate your time. We're going to hop on over and get Joel into here as Silas works his magic in the behind the scenes. Joel's going to be the first of the finalists we're going to talk to. We're going to have Joel and then Gary to wrap the show up, pick the brains of two of the guys that made it to the very end, see where they were at. Joel, welcome in. How are you doing today?
Good. How's it going?
Going good, man. Your voice sounds great right now. Real nice, deep, sultry. I kind of could soothe me to sleep with it. But
I'll give you a call later if you need it.
Okay, great. That's awesome. The first thing I want to talk about with you is in the show, one of the like key moments that really kept you around, possibly even to the end, was that putt during the first round. when you were actually playing the game, did you realize the significance of that big putt beyond just the immediate money, or did it not really settle in until you kind of were watching it all back?
No, I definitely, just before that putt, honestly, the money wasn't even on my mind. I was thinking like, I got to do this to save myself. And watching it back on camera, it didn't look quite as impressive as it felt. I was hyping it up to all my friends and
Can't
my
feel
wife.
the
I was
wind
telling
through
them, I
the
was like,
screen.
Yeah. Well, it was farther than it looked, in your credit too. It was a very impressive putt.
I feel like people need to know that. You guys should put that out there a little bit more. But no,
Okay.
I was hyping it up,
Make
and
a
then
note.
I was watching it, like, even with my wife, and she's like, didn't look as far as you made it sound. Okay.
Dang, humbled you real quick.
Just imagine how I felt seeing an impossible putt and just thinking, well, this is it. This is done deal. We just lost the first line. I'm about to cash out. And then watching that go in, like, my heart sunk to the floor, basically.
I mean,
because that putt was
makes you feel
impossible.
good. Oh yeah, it felt impossible. Honestly,
it was insane.
I saw a lot of comments in there saying stuff like, "I wonder if it was the wind that made that putt." And honestly, they're probably right. A lot of it was the wind that helped, but no, sometimes you just rise to the occasion. That's what I did.
Okay. Well, you had to put the putt in the right spot for the wind to help it.
Exactly.
You got to think about that. Another way to look at it.
Yeah.
The other big thing for you that I really wanted to talk through was the final round, the moments leading up to you casting the vote. I have never seen someone going through so many emotions as you standing there with Trevor on one shoulder like the devil, and then you had Mikey the angel on the other, chirping back and forth, and you look like you're just questioning life itself. And then you walk up and do the biggest brain play thing that I didn't even factor, which was voting for Gary. So walk me through kind of at what point did you decide this is my play, this is what I need to do, and also what it was like kind of sitting there trying to process all of that during the final vote.
Yeah, so believe it or not, I've actually told a couple people this, but from the end of round 4, I had the idea in my mind that if there were 2 people that I didn't trust, I trusted Mikey 100%. I said that several times throughout the show. But I figured if there were 2 people that I didn't trust, and that would be Trevor and Gary, that I would do my best to split the vote between them, because if it was anything like the last round, they'd both go home. And if Gary would have also gone home, in my mind, that was obviously safest for me. I win no matter what. Also, though, even if he wasn't, I'd feel a little bad, but like I knew he'd get some money from Mikey. My biggest concern, though, going into that, and like a lot of what you could see on my face, was me not knowing if I could trust that Trevor was actually going to vote for Gary and Gary was actually going to vote for Trevor. Because if one of those votes went sideways, then what I did wouldn't have mattered, and it would have given the imposter a lot of power. So that was really what you saw, all those nerves. But I knew, like, from the start of the round that that's what I was going to try to do. I'm pretty sure I even told Mikey at some point that what I wanted to do was try and split the vote. But yeah, I just was really nervous that something wasn't going to go according to plan.
Why did you trust Mikey but not Gary?
I don't know what it was. I mean, a lot of it had to do with the fact that he kept saying that he was going to give the money to.
Yeah, that was the big.
That was the big.
That was a big issue with the game. Big.
Yeah,
that'll do it.
Yeah.
We learned from that. We learned that's why reality show doesn't let contestants do that. Because I was like, when you said I trust Mikey, not Gary, I was like, what did Gary ever do to make you not trust him? But clearly Gary didn't say, hey, if I make it to the end, I'm not going to take any of the money. I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
So
a lot of it, I wanted to trust Gary. I think I even said this in the last episode. He was being very sincere the whole time, and it made me really want to trust him. But I also knew that if I was the imposter and I was talking to Gary, I would be overly sincere and try to get him to let his guard down. So I wasn't 100% sure if that's what he was doing to me. So I had like 90% suspicion on Trevor and 10% on Gary, but that 10% was enough to make me want to do what I could to make sure you also.
Let me ask you this. Because this is something that I have my assumptions about, but I'm obviously I don't know. First question would be, just when the imposter was announced to still be in the game. Well, first, let me ask you this. Did you think the imposter was still around before they announced it? Like, what would you say percentage-wise you were sure?
In the last round you're talking about?
Yeah, before we tee off, what percentage are you sure that the imposter's gone?
That's a tough one, because at the end of round 4, I would have said like 80% plus. I was fairly certain that it was Josh. But then after,
Wait, can you expound on why you thought it was Josh?
Yeah.
Why I thought it was Josh?
Yeah.
Gamesmanship.
That's a good
man.
question. I mean, even looking back, it's like, why did I don't know what it was. It could have just been the way
he looked at you the wrong way.
Yeah, it could have just been the way that everyone was talking that was like getting into my head.
He was organizing groups. He was a threat out there.
He was a lot of the times, like in between rounds and stuff, he was kind of trying to sway our thoughts and opinions.
But his play, which is the most important thing to get money,
had nothing to do with it.
That's what so many, if you want, like throughout it, everyone's mindset kind of shifted to the play means nothing. We need to look at non-play attributes. So it makes a lot of sense that it was a lot of what was going on like off the course.
Yeah. The biggest thing,
but that also like, okay.
The biggest thing was
because everybody was under pressure.
After round 3, I think it was, Larkin and I were driving back to the vote, and we got a call. we got a call from Josh, and Josh and Gary were driving together, and the first words out of Josh's mouth were, "Well, here's why you shouldn't vote me out." And he was just like immediately defending himself when it wasn't. So it was like we were already a little suspicious, and then him doing that was like, why? And then he came up with this idea that if one of us was the imposter and we didn't vote each other out at the end of the round, that circle of trust would get a little bit of the imposter's money. And so since that was his idea,
there was a coup.
It's a little much.
That's crazy. See, that's the type of stuff we got to find a way to get on camera next year, because that call is like the most important moment of the show for Josh's demise.
Josh would have done better if he didn't stay in the Airbnb.
Honestly,
yeah.
The Airbnb was kind of a little bit of a cheat code for those that weren't in the Airbnb, but in this instance, it actually hurt them.
2 of them were at each other's throats, and it killed them, but then it helped the other 2 of us.
So the other thing that I wanted to ask you was, okay, so we're on the tee, and now Hunter says the imposter is still there. Were you immediately like 90% me? And if so, why was that? Just out of like, was there reasoning for that, or was it just like that's where you felt you needed to land the vote to play it the safest?
Honestly, immediately. Immediately, I thought it was Gary, to be honest.
Okay.
At the start of that round, I was more suspicious of Gary. I'm not sure why, but as the round went on, it's not so much the stuff that you were doing that made me more suspicious of you. It was just I started to trust Gary a little bit more, but I also knew that in the end, it wasn't going to matter who I trusted more with how I was going to try to cast my vote.
Trevor, you need to do a sleepover that last night at the Airbnb. You could have stayed in.
The dilemma was, and I mean, if you go back and look at like Joel and Gary's conversations in the woods, like the vulnerability and fear that they share in those conversations is something that like I wasn't quite willing to stoop there. If you know what I mean.
Joel, did you realize that the power you held and you used it on Gary?
Oh my gosh,
assuming that you didn't realize it.
I got to ask you about the pinky promise.
Well, not just the pinky promise, but you asked Gary what the bottom of his disc said. And had you asked that to Trevor, Trevor didn't know what the bottom of any disc said except for imposter. We didn't realize that hole in the game until you asked it to Gary, and we just lucked out. Did that cross your mind, or were you just like asking that as general conversation?
I was asking it kind of as general conversation. After the round, I remember Trevor saying something about how like if I had asked him that question, or if I had asked him to make the pinky promise, he didn't know what he would have done.
You did ask me to make the pinky promise. I just like shook it off.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was like, I was just kind of like, like I was cooked.
I was so wrapped up
that's
in
what
my
I'm
own
saying.
thoughts,
Like,
I just didn't even.
I was in a big time battle of like, what level of desperation do I play this game at? Do I start crying to these guys? Like, and like the pinky promise, like I caved. I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't bring myself. I knew nobody would have hard feelings, but like I just, or maybe, but I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people in the comments, even my own sister, actually. She was like, did you really pinky promise Gary and then vote for him? I was like, all right, listen.
I didn't realize that.
I did not pinky promise that I wouldn't vote for him.
You said you
I
were
don't
the
remember
imposter.
what the exact thing was, but
Yeah,
it
you were just
didn't
saying
go
you weren't the
against
imposter.
any ethical code or anything like that. All right. I played it smart. I
That's
I
incredible.
didn't deceive him.
Okay, well, we're about to bring Gary on. So Larkin, I want to give you, not Larkin, Joel, I want to give you the floor. If there's any final thoughts you have, anything we didn't cover, maybe something from your comments or that your sister said that you want to clear the air on here, floor's yours.
Honestly, it was the only things that I had in mind were the that final decision and the pinky promise and the putt. Those were the three things that I wanted to talk about. The other thing was after I made that putt to be called Big Bird, and they said give me the wings, and I did the wings. They told me that it translated well on camera, and then I watched that shot, and they straight up lied to my face. That did not translate well on camera. I have gotten absolutely flamed by some of my friends.
Dang.
For that, so that's all right. That's all right.
They just don't understand the moment. They didn't get the moment.
I know.
If they
It's
knew
not that I
how big
regret
the
it,
putt
but
was.
they lied to me.
Dang. Well, hey, you could just show them this clip, let them know the putt was massive. The camera made it look a lot shorter. The wind was absolutely ripping. It was like a 1% chance of that thing going in. It looked impossible. So there you go. At least we have that.
I will definitely show them this.
Perfect. All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Let's go ahead and get Gary in, the final contestant we're gonna bring in tonight. We're stoked to wrap it up with another one of the finalists, and just kind of get his reaction to the whole show. Gary, welcome in. How are you feeling tonight?
The pinky promise breaking, man. I tell you what.
That's crazy,
awesome.
Gary, because you kind of got some. Yeah, you kind of got betrayed there, like pretty bad. That might have been the worst betrayal that happened on the show, because like you were kind of the lamb for slaughter there.
Yeah, because luckily it ended up not mattering. But Joel was willing to be like, deuces, he's off the show. He's going to get half of Mikey's money, or what is that, like a third of Mikey's money.
Did he tell you about that before it aired?
He just walks up to me. He's like, bro, I need you to look me in the eye. And just like, I'm like, this got serious real quick. And, the sacredness of the pinky promise is just, I don't know that he's old enough to understand the sacredness of the pinky promise. Those of us who've been around a little bit longer, we get it. But
oh, yeah.
no,
That's my wife and I's like binding contract. Like, I do not break a pinky promise. How old are you?
What?
How old are you, Gary?
How old do you think I am, Trevor?
27 at oldest.
That'd be nice.
At
I'm
the
34,
oldest.
Trevor. I'm 34.
No shot.
The right answer is old enough to party.
Whippersnapper.
I think I found that out and had the same reaction on my face. I think I just forgot. Wow, you look great, Gary.
Did you find out that Joel voted for you prior to the show airing, or was the first time you saw his vote like live on the show?
The moment after the whole thing was over, Joel turned to me and was very apologetic and let me know that he voted for me.
Okay.
So, because that was the first question that almost all of my friends and family had was did Joel apologize to you? Have you been getting text messages from him?
Well, I guess he didn't need to, because you got
no harm when the money's won. You know,
he didn't know the imposter's vote wasn't going to count, and so therefore his vote didn't matter at that point. But that was electric. I gotta walk back to the Sandusky round with you. Those 3 missed putts. Kind of walk me through after that round. I know that the vote ended up, I believe, splitting after that round.
He kind of got me voted out.
Yeah. How?
Really, if you think about it, you make those putts. My putt doesn't matter.
That is true. Walk me through kind of your mind space, where your head was at during those putts, and then after. How positive were you? Like, that just cost me the game, I'm going home.
Well, my favorite part was how in the comments those putts keep getting shorter.
They're saying it's like 5
It's like
feet.
a 5-footer.
They went from like 20-foot putts to 15-foot putts. I think someone's like, "How do you miss those 5-footers?" You know, but I missed the first one, and it's like, you know, you have to think back. I made the birdie putt on hole 1. I hit the good drive on hole 3. So missing the first putt was sort of like, we're bound to miss a shot.
Yeah,
It's
nobody
not that
thought
big of a
anything
deal.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you're putting downhill. It's a little bit of a straddle. If you miss a little low, whatever, it stays next to the basket. The second one was the first moment where I was like, okay, you really got to lock in. And I was starting to do the math in my head, and I realized I was getting stuck in this slot of where Josh was the one who was teeing.
Yep.
Brodie was the one who was getting me laid up to the basket, and I was the one who was putting. And I'm like, I need to shake this. So when Josh threw a banger of a drive, I'm like, all Brodie has to do is lay this up. I tap it in. I can redeem myself in the eyes of the team with a good drive on 18, and I can wash this away. And then he runs the putt, and I'm like, this is not good. This is not good. And I missed that putt, and literally I got in the car, and before I even started to drive back to the shop, I text my wife. I'm like, I think I'm done.
Dang.
I mean, you're not kidding about getting stuck in the slot. Like if you play enough of that alt shot format, that 10 to 20 foot putt slot, which can be like where you end up, is the worst place because you're just expected to make him, and it just puts you in a weird spot.
Yep.
And I think everybody had been there enough to know, like, to understand what happened. Like you missed the first one enough to make you think about the second one. And then by the time you get to the third one, obviously you're really thinking about it. But anytime you miss 3 putts in that quick in succession on the back of a loss, it's just going to be at least some kind of a case against you.
Yeah. Especially when you consider the putting performance in the first round and leading up to that point. And it was such a 180 of like what I was doing. And then when you consider that we were crushing it at Sandusky before that moment, it just a lot of things stacked up there to really, really do it for me. And the crazy part is I went into that voting session knowing that I either had to get on the bandwagon with everybody on something, or I had to convince people of something. And so
you tried to convince
this is actually the funny thing, right? Because the bandwagon play in my mind was Brodie, because everyone was talking about the weirdness of the stepper. But I tried to convince people to vote for Joel. And when I got in the voting booth, I didn't know which was going to be more effective. And I figured that people still had Joel's putt in their minds from round 1. I was this close to voting for Joel in round 2, which would have sent him home. But I decided to vote for Brodie, hoping that maybe he'd catch a stray or two from people who didn't know better. And I was the only person who didn't vote for either myself or Joel. I was the one person who voted for Brodie. And I never expected 2 people to not vote.
Yeah. The Joel voting early on just kept coming from, there were a few people who were saying he's the weak link. He might not be the imposter, but let's get rid of the weak link. And I don't believe in that argument. I don't think that argument makes sense. No. I know Brodie doesn't either. The only reason I was gassing everybody up, like, yeah, that sounds great, is because I just needed to attach myself to voting blocks. Yeah. So exactly. Like, I was like, yeah, totally. I'm on that. I'm on board with that. And I think a lot of people were like, if one person with influence started, one person who was safe. So like coming out of that Sandusky round, you're not feeling safe. So if somebody who is safe, like Josh, says, hey, let's vote the weak link, let's vote Joel, that feels like a good place to attach to. So like that's where I was headed.
Yeah. Makes sense.
How many lines were actually met?
2.
All but
3.
All but 2. 3 lines were actually
missed 2, then
hit.
Yep. We had how many rounds? We had 5 rounds. Yeah.
We missed the first 2.
Missed the first 2,
and the next 3 got hit.
The 3 got changed. The third one got changed.
We would have got cooked on the third one, but yeah, we had the.
So ultimately, what ended up happening were the line. Did the lines get kind of set kind of easy towards the end?
No. We only made the line by 1 stroke on the final round.
I mean,
they're easier than if you were in, yes, Brodie, but they were still, I think, pretty
first
difficult.
line was we were never making the first line.
The first line was made before I'd watched anyone play but you 2.
And then the second line, if you think about it too, the second line, everyone was playing incredible.
Yeah, everyone played very solid.
The only line that we got stress free to my memory was the Tim Brook one, and it's because there was a double line. So we were playing for more than just the baseline.
There was a little bit of adversity in the middle.
I like that double line.
Yeah, I thought that was a fun
great.
twist.
There was like one moment where I was like, if we mess up one more time, this gets interesting. But then the problem was solved, and I was like, all right, I need to just lay down my weapons here.
I like that one because it gave us. It almost lulled us into a false sense of security, and it forced the imposter, if they wanted to make us miss the line, to have to do something. And I know
going hard in the pain.
Watching it back now, Trevor. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Can't believe my blinders were on.
My favorite ones are the ones where I know there's one in particular where I'm scrambling, and the tree kick I got was so hilarious, but I knew nobody was behind me, so nobody even knew that happened. So, like, I tried to square a tree and just kicked right next to the basket.
Yeah, like
I will say, I was just to say, with Gary's putting, one thing, like, if you look at Trevor missing his putts versus Gary missing his putts, it is very difficult. Like, I was
trying to hit the lock.
You have to be really good at putting to miss the way that Gary was missing his putts, and also be lucky, because a lot of times those still go in the basket. So that's why, like, I was never, when Gary missed his 3 putts, I was never like, I think it's Gary's the imposter. It was just, he missed 3 putts.
That's a good point, because like Trevor, I know you were chaining out. For me, it's cage and down, nothing up.
You weren't even giving the putt chances at a certain point. But the problem was, I thought that's literally how you put it. So like when you were putting it, I wasn't thinking like, what the heck is going on? Like, I feel like I've seen you do that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely,
we've all done it.
I know, but I think you've gotten a lot better. He
has. No, this is Trevor's year. Trevor's been tough to beat this year.
I've been putting pretty well this year at times.
I want to get Gary's perspective on this, because with Joel, we just learned of a phone call that he, in his opinion, ended up sending Josh home, which was the phone call, I believe it was after round 4, that was made from y'all's car to Gary and Larkin's car, basically trying to get everyone in together to vote. And Joel had mentioned something along the lines of like a possible, if the imposter makes it to the end, splitting type of a thing. And in Joel's mind, since that came out of Josh's mouth, he was like, he has to be the imposter. What was your perspective on that phone call? And was that actually out of Josh's mouth, or was that through Gary through Josh's mouth?
So the really interesting thing here is when you look at the 4 of us as sort of like a microcosm within this game, there's a perspective that the 4 of us were a voting block. Yeah. Now, if you look at the rounds, you actually see that's not very true. Yeah. Because in the first round, Josh White was catching votes. There's nothing we can do about it. But even then, we voted differently. I voted for Larkin in the first round. In the second round, both Joel and Larkin voted for me. And then in the third round was the only round where we all kind of came together. Unfortunately for Brodie, that is what it is. But the fourth round, we voted against each other as a block. And then the fifth round. So we never really were a voting block, all working together to do anything. And when we were talking after the first night, there was a general sentiment in the air of like, well, the 4 of us could potentially guarantee ourselves a chance in the finals if we take out someone like a Brodie or a Trevor in the third round. And after the third round was over, a very quick phone call was made from Larkin and Joel to Josh and I while we were driving.
It's the other way.
We can get the phone logs to show that the call came from them to us, because Josh and I were just talking about the round, and I remember all this stuff, so people can debate it if they want to. But I think that call was Larkin recognizing that he caught a lot of strays from Brodie in the vote at the voting table in round 3, and was worried that he was going to get out. So he very quickly got on the phone to assure that we were all kind of on the same page about things. And Josh did bring up this concept early on about, hey, if one of us is the imposter, maybe we can do some kind of thing where we, if we take each other to the finals, we can guarantee some kind of money goes to each other. And that definitely happened. I mean, Josh and I both very early on looked at each other and said, hey, we're both telling each other we're not the imposter. But if for some reason we are, then we'll pay for the other person's Airbnb cost. That way you didn't like lose out, coming out here. But yeah, that did, I think, raise a little bit of suspicion, the whole money talk. And that I could definitely tell that was a trend for Joel, is like the all the little stuff like that, the scheming definitely got, I think, in his mind. And man, when we sat down at that table and Mikey threw Josh's name out there, that was like something I didn't expect. I didn't expect that at all.
Same.
I didn't realize there was this much money talk outside the game.
Crazy.
I mean, there was always going to be.
Yeah, we got to get all this on camera
I
next year, because
guess.
that is electric stuff. Right
Yeah,
now.
there's got to be a room at the place. If we all stay together, a room at the place where if you want to talk about the game, it has to be in there. Or if you want to do personals, it has to be in there. That way you can do whatever you want with that film. But yeah.
I mean, there's thousands of dollars on the line, and they paid their way. So like, there was gonna be money talk, no matter what.
For sure. And honestly, I think for a lot of us, those talks were more about trying to get feelers for each other than they were necessarily about talking about money. Because from the second round on, I was determined in my mind, and I was proven very wrong by this by the end of the fourth round. I was like, you know what? It's too on the nose for a foundation member to be the imposter in this series. Like, because if that goes south, I don't know that it's the greatest look in the world. It turned out to be fantastic. Trevor, you did an amazing job. So for a while, I was like, it's someone in this building, but I'm going to keep going along with the conversation if it gets me closer to the end, because it gives me more time to look. And as long as we hit lines, I firmly believe if we would have missed the line at Camp Hideaway, that Larkin would have went home and not Brodie.
Yeah, I think that might have made a lot of sense. The other thing that, while we have you here, I want to clear up is the moment that kind of put Trevor in the grave was when Trevor went up
this is
to,
crazy,
I
bro.
believe, Joel, and said something about like
crazy.
Gary's targeting you. And then y'all have a conversation. You're like, I never said that. And I talked to Trevor after the show, after it's all over. And I'm like, Trevor, dude, like what? Like, was that just like a tactic? He's like, Gary told me that for sure. So we got to get to the bottom of this.
Well,
do you remember the conversation, or who wants to go first on that?
I'll just say, I just want to say this to preface, like the way it was edited was because like there were more things said, obviously. The way it was edited was me saying that and then immediately being redacted. And like, I mean, anybody watching had to go straight to the comments and be like, well, solved this one. But in reality, what really happened was I had a conversation with Gary. Everybody was already pitting themselves against me. Whenever Gary talked to me, whatever he was telling me, I would assume was probably just him gaining a feel. Like he probably didn't believe for a second that Joel was the imposter, but he was probably saying that to me to get a feel. And he also probably didn't say it nearly as aggressive. I then was grasping at straws. I knew everybody's targeting me. I was looking for any one person that I can turn in my favor. So the second that the name Joel came out of Gary's mouth with even the hint of it could be him, which probably meant nothing to Gary, I took it straight to Joel and turned that into Gary's been targeting you. So yes, did I exaggerate? Yes. But did Gary mention Joel to me? Also, yes.
Yeah, when they cut to you telling that to Joel,
It's so
I
funny,
audibly
though.
gasped from my chair. I was like, so that's how that went down. No, it was a tough thing for me because going into that round, I knew that Joel and Mikey were like very close. So the two of them were almost going to be of one mind. And I really had suspicions that it was that it was you after we kind of thought about everybody, and especially once Hunter confirmed on the T-pad that the imposter was still among us. It all but confirmed in my mind it was probably going to be you, because I'd be willing to be wrong that it was Joel, because I don't think Joel was able to play that character. Yeah. And Mikey, I felt like he was too sincere to promise money to people and then just be like, I'm the imposter.
Yeah, I was the safe pick. Like I knew it was going to happen at that point.
So So when we had that conversation, and you're right, we talked for like 4 minutes. I was trying to convey to you my feelings without outright saying to your face, I know it's you, and I'm going for you. And so I did say stuff along the lines of, I'm not really sure that it's Joel. I'm not really sure that it's Mikey, but I kind of left the options open that I thought it could be either one of them. And I think later in the round, I even went to Mikey and I said, hey, if I have to have a conversation with Trevor, who am I supposed to put my suspicion on to sway him one way or another? Because I can't just keep going up to him and being like, I don't know, because I think he knows better that I'm not going to say I don't know or have an opinion.
Yeah. It
That
was
makes
extreme. I like, that was the first time at watching every episode, I was very much like, yeah, I was right on the pulse of the group. Watching the last episode, I was like, wow, I was way outside the pulse of the group. I was left in the dirt.
At what point, Gary, did your suspicion of Trevor start? Like, were you going into the final round thinking the imposter's for sure gone, and you were very confident he wasn't there before I said it? Or were you already like, it could be Trevor, I'm not sure?
So Trevor had a real big advantage in the 4th round, and that's that Larkin was on our team too. Because every single time Trevor threw a bad shot, didn't Larkin follow it up with the same line? Like when you threw it into the woods on that one hole and it bounced right back out, he literally threw it to the woods right behind you. And I was very, and don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed playing with Larkin, and he was a fantastic guy. I really thought he was the imposter from round 2 on, and round 3 and 4 really like strengthened that in my mind. So I think I said this in the episode. I'm a guy who's very big into like visualizing and thinking about things different ways. That's why I like strategy games. But I thought to myself going to bed that night, like if he wasn't the imposter, if we find out tomorrow that the imposter's still with us, who's it going to be? And I went and I immediately watched. I watched the FPO round on the shorts at New London, and then I watched your guys' video that you had recently done at New London, where Hunter had the issues on hole 7.
Oh,
and I was just trying to get myself in the mindset of like the course, and I was thinking through all the shots, and the only shots that I could go back to were some of the putts like that you missed wide, Trevor, or some of the ones where you went to putt, but they were just like, they were weak putts. They didn't seem like legitimate bids at the basket. And I'm like, that's the only direction I can go. And then I started walking down the line of, do I think Joel's capable of being the imposter and masterminding all this? I don't think he is. Not that he's definitely intellectually capable of it. I didn't know that he was emotionally capable of being the bad guy. And then Mikey just didn't feel like the right person there. So I kind of came into the round with, if we find out the imposter's still here, I got to watch Trevor. And the first thing you did was you were awesome on hole 2. And that was you shook my confidence in my opinion right away. And the hole that did it in, the hole that finalized it for me, that I was voting for you, was I don't remember the number of the hole. It's the one where you're throwing down into sort of a area with an elevated basket.
14.
Yeah, it felt like you should have thrown something that was going to flip more, and you threw something that was way too stable for that moment. And I'm like,
the Trevor classic, or
no, yeah, that's one
I've seen him do that before.
That's what got the shark out of his bag.
That's not what got me in trouble, though. And if you watch the show, though, it's not the throw that got me in trouble necessarily. Mikey and Gary talked about it was my comment.
Yeah, the gash.
And I've really tried to rack my brain since then to try to remember, because what happened was I had a KC rock and I threw it and it went too far to the left. Now I will say this, that was certainly not my disc of preference. Absolutely not. But I feel like there was a part of me that genuinely spat out that, oh, I thought it was going to flip because it got a gash on it earlier. Like I feel like that came. There's something about being the imposter, throwing a bad shot, but feeling real shame. Like you're throwing it on purpose to be wrong, but you still feel like you have to justify it, like not even in an acting sense. So while, yes, the shot was purposely bad, I feel like the comment I made, because you guys weren't taking that for nothing. Like Mikey was like, Trevor trying to claim a disc was going to flip because it got gashed earlier is like wild. And yeah, that was a wild thing to say. Like I was almost embarrassed watching that back. Like what kind of jokes or comment was that?
Definitely fly different though with the gash.
But you wouldn't, in that situation, you wouldn't just trust
relying it on it.
Like you weren't saying like, I haven't thrown this since it got hit by that rock, but I bet it's going to flip. Like in the situation where I need it most.
This is where like Mikey, like him saying, I wish he was on the show, because stuff like that was being said all the time and people were just letting these people in the game. And that's what I'm saying is my biggest gripe, and obviously if you want me, call me salty, that is completely fine, because I probably am. But my biggest gripe, my biggest gripe is you have people telling people to do crazy stuff. You have what Trevor just did. Someone was trying to get someone to throw a disc that they've never thrown. Trevor's actually throwing a disc that's in his bag. You had someone saying, hey, I've never thrown this disc. You've never seen this disc. Here, you throw. So that's where, like, what Mikey says there, I get it. It was good for TV, all that. But, like, at the end of the day, I really think a lot of times these people, when it comes to voting, I think Trevor is right. They're voting for whoever is going to keep them in the game. And ultimately, too, they're just closing their eyes with a dartboard and chucking a dartboard and probably missing the dartboard and then just saying, I'm just going to vote for this person. Because like the voting made no sense. Like later in the episodes, the voting made absolutely no sense.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because I had it a way that I kind of wanted to be involved in the voting element, but the moment I had that hiccup in round 2, I had to throw all of that out of the vote because I had to save myself.
Yeah, the voting makes perfect sense from an emotional standpoint. It just makes no sense from a gamesmanship standpoint because the reason the votes landed on me.
I guess ultimately that was my big flaw is I thought we were a team and we were trying to accomplish a goal when ultimately it was just a group of individuals. And that was kind of, and that would have been sport. That would have actually been fascinating. Another wrinkle, Hunter, would have been fascinating is if there was like a bonus based off of what round you got the imposter out on. Because the way I viewed it is really good point. There was really like when I got voted off, I honestly don't think people voted me off thinking I was the imposter.
No, that's a very good point because that would have changed maybe 2 or 3 votes.
Yeah, people were just voting me off because they thought the game would be easier for them, which also makes no sense. But people voted me off thinking the game would be easier for them going forward. So I think that might be a good wrinkle. That's
a very good wrinkle.
Instead of just voting this person off so I can stay in. If you actually work, because there was I don't know, that was my big issue, and maybe that's just because I'm a team player and I love being a part of a team and trying to reach a goal. It just a lot of times felt like I was yelling, and sure, maybe I was, and like no one was listening to what I was saying, and I was like,
correct.
I was like, can we please just vote this person off? Because that's the only time that happened was the first round.
Yeah.
We all voted Josh. That made the most sense. Now, turns out he was the imposter, but if you're going to do stuff like that, you're not going to be in the game. And ultimately, it didn't work out that way.
And you could tell there was a lot of like trepidation at the table to even bring up things that people did. Oh, yeah. Nobody wanted to say this, that, or whatever. And I format of once the voting starts, you can't say your piece. Maybe people are more willing to say what they have to say about people because they know they can't hide behind the persons in the room.
Yeah,
I can say it while they're not here.
It did create some electricity, but
it did. It certainly did. The edit of the year was when Trevor was talking about me in the final round, and you guys are slowly muting the volume as you zoom in on Joel.
Yeah,
just absolutely being soul crushed.
He was
decision.
He was just like
when Connor showed me that. When Connor showed me that, and when Connor showed me the callback when Joel said something about like you being a family man and like needing the money, and Connor somehow remembered and threw it back to you talking about like I'm thinking if I get the money like that's daycare costs. I looked at Connor and I was like, how did you find that? Like, how did you know that? And he just like had a big smile on his face and let it just keep playing. That was, it really, you could feel the tension.
That was a great editing moment right there.
Yeah, you could feel
Connor and I are homeboys.
Yeah, that was awesome. But okay, Gary, we're going to wrap it up here. Any final piece, anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to touch on or any parting thoughts?
I think that for all the people out there who talk about the show and have opinions and ideas, and I think largely everyone's had a very positive reception of the show. As someone who's seen the back end of it, the amount of work that these guys did to put this on and to make this go so well for the first time doing it, it was incredible for just running this thing out of the blue. And I only know it's going to get better. So I was super thrilled to be a part of the whole process. I'm waiting for the Heroes versus Villains season 8, whenever that happens. But otherwise, it was fantastic. I think you guys did a great job, and you're going to take the feedback and you're going to go great places with it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you as always, Gary, and I'm sure people will see you around and more content. If nothing else, dominating debate night next year yet again. I'm sure.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So there you have it, ladies and gents. That's going to be our imposter kind of reunion recap episode. Really appreciate the 4 Air BnB guys coming on, giving us some great tidbits. I mean, I had no idea some of that game talk was going on.
That phone call's wild.
That phone call's awesome. And who knows who made it?
Wild.
But it's crazy that that's what got Josh out, because it really makes a lot more sense now knowing that went on, because like that didn't even get brought up in voting. Like if Joel would have said like, listen, there was a phone call, Josh was trying to, it would have all clicked, but I was still trying to piece it all together.
Like, it still doesn't make sense. I'm still like trying to, maybe I'm just an idiot, or maybe I've just watched too much reality TV. But like when a guy's he's like, the insurance claim makes a whole lot of sense. Hey, there's a really good chance one of us 4 is the imposter. So if that ends up being the case and one of you guys have been lying to us, let's just I mean, to be fair, that is against the rules in most reality shows. But the idea of it, of like having like a little of insurance at the end, I don't know. I feel like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but I mean, it was his
But
demise.
they saw it as a threat. They were like, we got to get this guy out of here.
Because a lot of people, and even them, were like bringing up like the me revealing on the final tee. And I don't know. I think I talked about this briefly during the final episode, but now that we've like seen them all, I just want to re-highlight a moment that happened between Trevor and I after round 4. The voting's done, everyone goes home, and Trevor came in my office and basically sat down and looked at me and was like, I don't have the guts to take the money from them tomorrow, and I don't morally know what I'm supposed to do about that. And I was like, well, Trev, like, what do you want me to do? And so we walked through, like, he's like, because I think it might have been that Joel had someone like come to him.
Trevor stays in if you don't say the imposter.
The only reason I said that is because I knew that I was gonna get through if nobody knew the imposter was there.
Yeah.
Like that for me was a guarantee.
And so that was really what led to the moment where I was like, well, Trevor, like, would it make you feel more comfortable if I told him the imposter's there? Because we also were pretty aware, like Joel, Gary, and Mikey, I knew there's no way they're voting for each other unless something crazy happens during that final round. So we were pretty aware, like on the final round, if I say on the first tee, the imposter's still here, like people are gonna basically immediately jump on Trevor.
What do we think the alternative would have been? Would you have given, like, let's pose, if the round ends, you don't say that there's an imposter still alive, the round ends, and now you pose the question. If you guys think the imposter is still in play, you can vote. If you think the imposter is not in play, you don't have to vote.
They would have chucked the vote.
Do you think they would have?
I think at least two of them don't vote.
The alternative that in hindsight would have been even more chaotic would have been Hunter not saying a word, and then right before we get to voting saying you have to cast a vote, you have no choice. People would have lost their mind.
Well, I think if I would have left it, because
they would have freaked out.
The intention was you didn't have to vote the whole show, mainly because I was hoping there would have been a scenario, which it never happened, where everyone didn't vote but Trevor, but the imposter. And then everyone's at the table like, I didn't vote, because that was the show I watched called The Trust. And everyone comes back and it's like, I didn't vote. But then the host is like, the trust was broken and so-and-so's going home. And then you're looking at everyone and you're like, one of these people's lying to me. That was the moment I was hoping for. It never happened. I think in the finals, what would have happened is I think that Mikey and Gary probably wouldn't have voted. And I think Joel would have casted a vote, because I think he was playing for pure, like, I need my safety. And it would have just come down to, could Trevor have convinced him to vote for Gary? Because he would have had the deciding vote. And if he would have chosen to vote Gary.
Based on what he said, he was swaying towards me. So he probably would have gotten me out. But he would have saved their butts, which would have been electric.
He probably would have still fired. But I think, because Mikey told me before the round, like, if I'm positive the imposter's gone, if you say the imposter's here, I'm going to crap my pants. So he was like, he wasn't voting, and Trevor didn't do anything play-wise suspicious until hole 18. You had a few shots.
Mikey did hate the way that Trevor responded on
thing.
That Trevor responded on hole 1. Mikey did not like how Trevor responded.
But that was only
because
because
that was egregious. Because that was my role the entire show.
I was gonna say, which is again a team thing. Like when you hear bad news as a team, you need your leader to step up and say, "Screw it, who cares? We're going to battle, boys." That's why, I think Trevor played a great game.
The weird part is you're kind of a team, because especially in that moment, before you're like majority a team, but in that moment,
team, there's 75% of the people are a team.
But it is weird in that moment being like, we need to band together and do this, and you're talking to one of the opponents. It's like when you're like have a huddle like in the NBA, and like someone just like popping their head into the huddle, and they're like, get out of here, what are you doing?
It does get weirder the less the majority.
The fewer the people, the weirder it gets.
It's like
I could see that maybe, but I don't know. I feel like when spirits are down, you need your leader to step forward.
Yeah, I didn't think it was weird. And I let it breathe a lot longer than he made it seem like. It's not like I just popped up on the tee pad. I was just looking around at people. But there is one of my favorite shots of the entire show is Gary in anguish. And you look behind and you see me just blank staring.
Yeah, it's like right behind the tree. Trevor just has no emotion.
Times it cuts to that. And I thought it was so funny.
Well, it's hard to, you can't really fake the emotion that they were going through.
No, I was going for
thousands of dollars
silence.
Were like genuinely on the line, and Trevor's just sitting there like, yeah, I'm here.
I was just gonna go. Where it's like,
honestly, I think your best bet might have been, because in that moment when I watched the edit back and I was trying to think like, if I don't know who it is, the person that looked the most suspicious was Mikey to me, because Mikey turned his back to the camera and walked away. And like, if you do that, it looks, oh, you're in anguish or whatever, but no one can see your face. And if you go walk away,
you should have done.
Trying to get people to turn on
Mikey. Why are you walking away?
Crazy though.
Because if you spun it on Mikey, I'm just saying, if you would have just turned and walked away where no one could see the like little smirk on your face or whatever you had to have in that moment, and you just walk away for like 10, 15 seconds, then come back composed, where it looks like the news hit you, you're gone, you're gathering yourself.
Yeah, I could have sold it. There's a lot of things I could have sold.
It was priceless. The cut to you just standing behind the tree and you're just like,
I'm just staring.
This is the other thing. I don't know if you guys remember in Survivor, a guy by the name of Johnny Fairplay swore on his dead grandma. I think she just recently had died or was about, I don't know, but swore on his grandmother's life to this lady, I believe, that he was not going to vote for her, whatever. And his whole thing was like Johnny Fairplay, threw like the peace signs up, and he was the biggest villain ever, but ended up going really, really far. I think he actually ended up winning potentially as well. And I think the issue is like on a game like Survivor, as soon as you're done with the game, you're like, bro, I got the money. I'm good. I don't care about any of these people. I don't care about social media. I don't care about anything. We're like, no one, when Mikey said he was going to split the money, there's no chance he's not going to, because in the small disc golf world, that would have been really bad for him.
We got to slap the imposter on a real shady character one of these days. Like, let me give you an example.
Grab some random guy that like has no following, like that doesn't give a rip.
You look at somebody like Joel, who was so clearly so emotionally drained and involved, and a lot of the players were like that. If you now turn that desperation into imposter desperation, there's no telling what happens. There's no telling.
Now, no, we're definitely going to bring it back in some way, shape, or form next year, and we're stoked. We have a lot of really good ideas from the comments, from the people who played themselves, from Brodie during this show, where you get a bonus for what round the imposter's out on. We got all kinds of stuff cooking. So we're really excited to bring it back, and who knows who you might see on there again next year, and who knows who you might see that wasn't on there that is going to be on next year. We're very, very excited about that. And that's going to wrap up the show. Next week, I'm out of town, so I would imagine Trevor might be holding down the ship. Maybe we'll Dark Horse get Silas on. That could be electric.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, next week's hot takes. We're going hot takes next week.
Should I just let Silas host the show? Should I just send Silas the game guessing, and then let Silas
we should let Silas rant about things he likes to rant about in disc golf, because there's some few real fun ones, particularly the Disc Golf Network.
You're not going to want to miss. Next week is the Silas special episode of the off season. Silas is going to be taking my chair. I haven't asked him that yet. I just threw it on him. So that's going to be next week, the Silas special, and then, or the Silas Selects episode. I like that. And then I'll be back the following week, and we'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming. I have several people who have submitted form videos
Yes.
for the guessing
Thank
game.
you.
So
Thank you.
we'll get in on
go.
that. If you want to submit your form video, please do so to hunter@foundationdisc.com, and these guys will try to guess what your rating is. Also, do not forget, Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern time, foundationdisc.com is when our Black Friday deals go down. We got mystery boxes that have some crazy discs, and then we have all kinds of personality discs, including the brand new Trevor Staub Cash. Our entire site is on sale. We have massive restocks of your favorite brands like Discraft, MVP, Clash, and all that's on sale. And we have new apparel like this hoodie I'm rocking. We have jerseys. All that's on sale. And you can even get accessories 40% off, which are perfect stocking stuffers. So all kinds of stuff. Foundationdisc.com, Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And if you want to submit a story or a topic, check the link in the description down below. And other than that, we will see you back here next week.